Hello, beautiful. So
Welcome.
nice to connect.
Thank you for coming on. Would you like me to address you as Maria or Marcia?
I think Marsha, because you know me as Marsha. I think the change, I claimed back my Maria earlier this year with my birthday. Yeah, so to new people, I do introduce myself as Maria, but to old people that know me as Marsha, it's Marsha.
Can you tell me about reclaiming your name?
Yes, I'm Russian, so like I say Siberian because that's yeah. So in terms of Russian language, so with us, we are born with like our first name and then our dad's middle name, like a dad's name basically as a middle name, and then a last name, which is usually also our dad's last name.
Mhm.
And Maria and Masha are actually all the same names in Russian, but in
Yeah,
English it's different. So it's like Maria is just a more like a grown-up woman, somebody that doesn't know me would address me as that. But
yeah.
for those who like know me and everything else, then they do call me Marsha. So
Okay.
it's this weird like language thing.
Okay, well, I want to call you
Yeah.
Maria because you reclaimed your name, and I want to call you by the name that you want to be known by.
Mm. Oh, that's so fun. Yes, yes.
Okay,
Maria
cool.
is just, I feel like, Maria is linked to a lot of my sort of these other codes are coming in terms of just the rose lineage and everything else. It's like I'm not a girl anymore. And Marsha, it's very
Yeah.
much a girl name. And yeah, like
Mm,
Maria is just a grown woman name in our culture. Like I say, it's just
yeah,
a like a language cultural thing. But
right.
yeah.
I love that. That's so in theme with what I want to talk to you about today, too. Just like that transition from being a girl into a woman. And my course is called Awakening the Wild Woman. And I just
Mm.
wanted to introduce everyone to Maria, who we met through mutual friends through an app called Sunroom. And I Instagram stalked Maria and I saw her beautiful wild woman photography. And I don't think at the time I had even known the name of my program. I'm not sure. This was probably a little over a year ago. But I was in the midst of the first breakup of the past year out of a 5-year relationship, but it was in such it like opened all of the wounds of reclaiming sexuality and reclaiming womanhood and also that fierce dark feminine and reclaiming that in
Yeah.
such a big way in terms of rage and the womb space and bleeding and ceremony and connecting to all of the disowned parts of the witch wound. And then I think I saw your images and it just struck something so deep within me, like a deep cavernous roar that like comes from, as my Vedic astrologer would say, my poussoir. He's a
Ma poussoir,
my poussoir.
yes.
And it just resonated so deeply. And even looking at the images still in the way that it captures that spirit, it's can't be said in words. It's like sensations in the body,
Mm.
which so much of my work is about is, this embodiment and this learning to understand the language of the body that's not up here, but all in here. And you just capture that through your essence as a being, through the work that you put out in the world. It's a total vibe and a frequency that I so admire and I love. And so I just really wanted to talk to you about
Hmm.
your journey, your how you got to your work, and all kinds of rich things about everything that your work evokes.
Yeah, love that. Wow. Just, listening to your journey has really allowed me to, yeah, just so deeply reflect on mine. And I resonate so much with what you're saying. And I think these type of catalysts in our life like really bring us to these deeper layers of ourselves where we are just like we have to go deeper in to just like undo all these things. So yeah, just honoring you for your journey because I've been witnessing you in your reparenting and your how you gracefully navigate breakups and really give yourself the nourishment and the regulation and everything else that you need as well.
Thank you. And it's so nice having community, right? I feel like
Yeah.
over the past year and a half, even our shares, even you're in
Mm.
Australia and even being able to support each other is so
Yeah.
nourishing.
Yeah, it's been really beautiful, and yeah, it's I love community, and that's why I love the spirit of the internet, and the
Yeah,
entity that is Instagram as well. It's like there is so much good in it. Although, like I say, I do feel that it's very much for me. It's a modern day witch hunt because I
totally.
keep being deleted on there because, yeah,
Right.
my art is so potent and powerful and very naked and
Yes.
very
I
raw and
mean,
real.
yeah, I really want to talk about that part. And like that part's so rich because I've more recently experienced this in the being crucified of myself shaking online and, brings out all the internet trolls and like so much misogyny of how I should be in a
Mm,
straitjacket or like, why would I post things like that? Like how embarrassing, how cringe. And so there's for those of you watching, of course, there's a link underneath with some of Maria's work. Maria's work I just to give some context about the container of the Wild Women ceremonies that you put together, and just so and like what kind of
mm.
images you create so that they have
Yeah.
context.
Yeah, so these circles are very much these shamanic photo shoots and ceremonies, and I always say they're not fluffy circles where, you come to and you sit around a circle and you do angel cards and you talk about fluffy things and you wear a pretty dress. Not that there is
Yeah,
anything wrong with those circles. I go to those circles and there is a time and a place for those circles. But I feel like my circles, although like when they were birthed with the Wild Woman circles back in like 2020 when, shit was really hitting the fan,
yeah.
and I just had this deepest roar in my womb and in my heart that, like, over my dead body, are we going to be isolating, keep each other so far away from each other and not gathering together as women? And
Mhm.
I had so much like rage and just this like real dragon lioness energy around me that
Yeah,
I was just like, no. And yeah, like I gathered the sisters, my own sisters, around the beach, just at the back of where I lived. And, it was this beautiful private beach. And we just sat in ceremony around the fire and we really just like put our intention on just praying for the world because it was just like we were so lucky in Australia, and especially in the state that I was in, like it was very mild, but I could
yeah.
see what's happening to my family. I can see what's happening to the world. I see what's happening to
Right.
other states. I see that I couldn't go to other states to even see my family, or not my family, but my friends. But anyway, so we just prayed, and then one of my sisters had this really big process and I really held her through it, and it was this like ancient rage for
Mhm.
all the times that she's been silenced. She received a text message from her grandmother just basically saying like, I'm basically disgusted with you or what you're doing now for work, and you're already dating this really old man, and now you're
Mm,
doing this yoni massage. Like, what are you talking about? Like, who are you
yeah,
and what are you doing, And
right.
she was just like, "Oh my gosh, but this is my calling." And anyway, so I was like, "There is a fire here. Let's just bring it." Like all the times that you've been shamed for actually following your heart and doing what you know it's right,
Right.
just like scream for all those times. And then she just went into it. And it was just like a really profound, unintentional, but also very intentional kind of ceremonial gathering with just my
Right.
sisters.
Right.
And then we went back to mine and we had dinner. And, I also was like, wow, like that would have been so powerful to capture because obviously I'm a professional photographer and that's what I do for a living
Yeah.
and the sacred space holder already. So I was like, wow, like that was so potent, but we didn't get any images,
Yeah.
of course, because we were so in a moment and it was so sacred.
Yeah. Totally.
And yeah, and just
Wow.
something in me said that like, wow. And all the sisters were like, that was so powerful, and the way that you held space. And then I got to awaken all these things within women, and we all just like unleashed into the fire. And because I work with
Yeah.
the elements so much, and I work with the element of fire so much in my own
Right.
plant journeys and everything else, it's like I do see the fire as my ally.
Yeah,
And again, it's just these flashbacks of real ancient times where we used to gather, in red
right.
tents as women around the fire in like full
Totally.
tribal primordial selves. And we used to bleed
Right,
together and share and heal. And I really, the next day, and one of my sisters said, like, you need to do this. Like,
right.
it's a thing, it's something's here.
Yes. Wow.
And
Oh,
I was like, yeah, wow. And yeah, just straight on come on my stories. And I was like, women, for those of you who are game enough to leave your houses right now and come and gather around the fire and we can get naked and we can get really just, but like I said, obviously there's a journey within my own woman that led up to it. So within the circles now, how they evolved to what they are right now is that, yeah, they are shamanic ceremonies, they are photo shoots, and it's a very powerful container that I open up, and then the
mhm.
energies that I work with and everything else. And so it becomes this basically like a journey that people go on and to reawaken the wild woman. And I say that I breathe wilderness back into women,
Oh,
meaning that
love
you
that.
just get to be your full self, and
Right,
you get to be witnessed in your rage, in your sadness, in your anger, in your hatred, and it doesn't always have to be these really dark, like those
right,
like unprocessed emotions, more like the
right.
denser stuff. But some people really do heal deep sisterhood wounds and they've never even like seeing other sisters nude, or it's
Mhm.
also like they have so much body shame or
Totally.
not really comfortable with their sexuality, and
Right.
not really, just not really being able to be in their central bodies.
Mhm.
So it's a full journey, and then whilst I facilitate and take women into this deeper process, I also photograph all of it.
Oh, that is so beautiful. I mean, just like that whole process itself is like in it, there's community, right? And like how we co-regulate with one another in such a profound
Yeah.
way that like we tribal, like that's how our nervous systems developed. And, to be in
Mm.
community like that with each other and not in competition and separation. And also the richness of what you're talking about, capturing these like raw, like just life force energy emotions that have been taken away from women, to tell me that
Yes.
I belong in a straitjacket because I'm showing this online, right? Whereas like if I had shown up as a man, I may have become president or something, you know?
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's
Yeah,
so much repression in women these days. We're so
totally.
groomed. We're so like, we just need to be like these, we have our own, we just like need to be put into these molds where
Pretty
what's
packages.
yeah, pretty packages and stuff that's like, oh, yeah, no, it's not too much. And, I'm just like,
Right.
fuck that. Like, all of you
Totally.
gets to be witnessed and healed. And we heal. So much healing happens when you actually get to be witnessed in
Right.
these states, in these
Right.
expressions, in these transmissions of who you fucking are. And
Yeah,
just
exactly.
allow it to come through, and I feel like when it allows to come through and then you get to integrate it, that's when it can be a much more like an integrated, embodied
Right.
expression, other than
Right.
just something really pretty chaotic, which
Yeah,
I do see that like when for the first time these things come out of people, it's manic and
totally.
can be very
Right.
cathartic. Yeah.
Totally.
And I mean, like I hold space for all of it because I know that that's just the process. But even like you said, mentioned the regulations of the nervous system, because all of my cycles happen like in nature.
Mhm.
I think that's also so grounding. And
Yeah.
also because we're all nude and there is so much like cuddle puddles and women holding each other nude, like heart to heart, womb to
Right.
womb.
Right.
It's really like everybody when they leave, they're like, wow, like I feel so in my body, I feel so grounded. I feel like so moved and
Right.
activated. And like
Right.
it's like a deep remembrance that happens with women when they come.
Totally. It's like that whole process encapsulates literally everything I'm talking about in this 6-month course because it's like I'm bridging like the westernized like somatics, which like is all the exercises and nervous system regulation and everything that has been brought to the
Mm,
West but also like in the presence of nature, then we're talking about like the divine mother, right? Like we can't do it all alone.
Yeah,
Sometimes
no.
these emotions, it's like acknowledging there's something so much greater than us that can hold us when we are in this place of despair. One is each other, two is
Mm.
nature and the divine mother, and connecting back to spirit and grounding, in the earth.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and also what is birthed in that place, even for you, right? Like yours came from a deep roar of like a fuck no, like over my dead body.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's how I began shift. I had been training to shift into this work, but I was so caged by like, oh my
Mm.
God, I can't show up online not being this weight. Like I'm too short to be an Instagram person, like how will people, like all of this messaging that was like holding me back and
Yes.
my body. And I would just remember there was like, I was going through just like the darkest night of the soul. And I was like in the
Mm.
tub and I was like, I might just put my head underwater because I don't know if I can go on living like this, like as a woman with like the every day felt like ticking by, like my worth was leaving me. It was crazy. And so I put my head underwater and it was so uncomfortable. And I experienced the same roar that I was just like, fuck no. And then, it all has like spiraled into whatever I'm doing now. Um, which
Wow.
is like that alchemical process that you're facilitating of
Mhm.
like what's chaotic before, because society deems that as that and it stays in that place. But when there's a
Yeah.
place for it to alchemize and be seen and witnessed for what it is, which is sheer power, which is like, the
Yeah.
matriarchy, this was seen as like the divine feminine, right? And then it
Totally.
morphs and then it changes into like your art and your expression in the world and our voice and yeah, so that's so beautiful, and
Oh, I love that share, and yeah, like I feel that so deeply, and yeah, it's all of that, like the threads, like I say, yeah, like from the olden times with the goddesses and the priestesses and these like the divine feminine, and
Mhm.
the matriarchy and the women, and also just like even the mothers being at the center of our community, like it's
Yeah,
like if we put mothers at the center of our communities, then the world does become a better place. And
right.
then there's also the patriarchy and how suppressed and burned and all the things that were happened to us
Yeah,
and the journey. But then now I really do feel like, and what I really want to bring through as well, even with my wild woman retreats, is this sacred union, not only within us with our own divine masculine and divine feminine, and just sort of
yeah,
having that sacred marriage within us and
totally.
knowing that we need both, and
Right,
also outside as well. I'm so passionate about women and men coming together in union and this beautiful understanding that we are so much more exalted together.
totally.
And
Yeah,
like, how can men allow for our full range to
right,
be there and to be loved and to be witnessed and
right,
to not feel like we're too much or we're not good enough and all the full spectrum of that. And
right,
also for the men to feel safe enough in their emotions as well. And like,
right,
knowing that, yeah, it's like, again, how can we self-regulate and have those things that you teach about and you're so incredible at, how can we know when to self-resource and when to self-regulate, on how do we know when to actually, co-regulate and co-create and co-weave just the next kind of era together
right.
in a more
Totally.
healed way. Like, yeah, like
Yeah,
I really, really, I'm passionate. Yeah, and there's so much like men's work and like, I guess, like the archetypal work that's happening here in Australia with a lot of beautiful brothers that I have, and
hmm,
the deep healing that happens when brothers also come, and you got the sacred
right.
sons over in the
Yeah,
US, which is fucking hot. I'm like, I need to go there and find myself a husband because
yeah,
all those guys are hot and they're so mean.
yeah, I know. I'm always like, I'll send any partner over there. Go
Oh
get
my
healed.
god, yeah. Sacred sons, hit me up.
Yeah,
No, joking. But yeah, so it's so beautiful. Like, and I love that. I love to see people really just doing the work. And,
right.
like I said, a lot of women come to my wild women circles, and I think there's so much that gets like sparked in them, and then they
Yeah.
go off and they just start having these most incredible journeys. And
Mhm.
I'm just like, wow, I really feel like I'm this like way shower, and
Yeah.
this person that like really brings women together, and then they connect in at my circles and start creating magic together, or
Right.
like I say, something awakens within these women,
Awakens.
and they're just like, wow, like I'm different, doing things
Yeah.
different. And then they just go off on their journey, and I'm just this
Right.
doula of people's true authentic expression and their being. And it's
Right.
like I call them back into their body and I put them like back on track.
Totally. I love that you said that because similar to like Kali, the goddess, like the wild woman
Mm,
archetype isn't just destruction. It's not just like
yeah.
wild, and I'm curious for you to speak to what is like the embodiment of the wild woman? What are the traits? What are the like how does she live and move about the world? Like what is it that awakens? And yeah, I'm just curious from in your own words.
Mm. For me, the wild woman is she's sovereign.
Mm,
She comes from the earth, not from the bone of a man.
yeah.
She
Yes,
comes
cute.
from the earth,
Yeah.
and she is unapologetic. She is untamed in a way that she has like no shackles, like from
Mm,
patriarchy or society. It's this like true, beautiful, exalted self expression,
hmm.
but she's connected to the elements and the earth and
Yeah.
the sun and God and spirit. It's
Mm,
like she can hear the song of the winds, and really also just be in her so beautifully in her body that she
mm,
feels comfortable in who the fuck she is. Like
yeah.
there is no shame. She has worked through a lot of the shame, and or has, addressed all those parts of her. And
Right.
she's somebody that is, yeah, like tapped into her sensuality and sexuality. She's somebody that is, I believe also the wild woman is, there is different parts of her, and I guess this is the exalted part, but she's just, part of us all, but
Yeah.
it's just one of the archetypes that we all carry that
Right.
makes up. I feel like for me, it's like the overarching one is, I guess, it's like when you embody all the parts of this, like the sacred slut and the wild woman and all these other things. It's like,
Right.
the queen or the high priestess. For me, it's like the overarching sort of archetype. And this, when you can be this wild woman that's just like from the earth, that you can like, I guess in some of the expression of it is like, I feel like, you can hiss, and you can
Mm,
just like be this like animalistic, primordial, like raw, wild, like
right.
untamed woman.
Totally.
That's like, she is that lives in the swamps. She's also like the dark feminine archetype is also, she's powerful, she's sovereign, she has agency, you
Right.
know?
Right.
She's not outsourcing.
Right.
She's
Yeah.
very in her power, and
Totally.
yeah, like it's elemental, it's very primordial, it's this like full Shakti energy,
Mm-hmm.
but it's loving, and like I say, it's very nurturing, and it's also very, I feel like what comes to mind as well, like when men get to receive this transmission, if we're just speaking about like the feminine essence and the divine feminine and the wild woman, if you were to be in this transition, in this transmission to the out world,
Mm-hmm.
it will awaken that fire within with people.
Right.
But like the good fire, it's like, whoa, like that makes me feel something.
Right.
And again, it brings it back to the photos that I take and the transmissions that my artwork is, because
Mm-hmm.
my photos and these type of work makes people feel something,
Yeah.
because the energy of this is so strong.
Right. Well, that's something that I've been thinking about too in like awakening things in people. just with like the viral backlash that I got, in addition to the awakening, like the positive feedback.
Mm,
Do you feel too that like the wild woman archetype, there's something about like a healthy amount of provocation? Like she's almost like a provocateur sometimes,
provocateur.
provocateur,
Ooh.
because like not everybody can receive it, or like not every,
Yes,
sometimes there's projection that's received, and I feel like you
absolutely.
have for sure probably received that from your photos, right?
I mean, it's interesting because, yeah, I've never really, the only probably like thing in comment is somebody messaged me basically kind of, honestly, I don't get a lot of like
Hmm.
shitty comments or anything like that. Like, if anything, like obviously my photos do get deleted and
Yeah.
accounts get deleted. My Wild Woman
Right.
Circles accounts have been deleted before, and I had to just
Yeah.
start over.
Oh.
But I feel like it is quite provocative. It's a strong energy. And even at the moment, what I'm navigating in my own life, because of who I am now,
Mm.
today, and I know what the fuck I want and who I
Yeah.
am and what I
Yeah.
bring to the table, and that I'm not afraid to eat alone,
Yeah.
is it's a lot for people to receive that kind of certainty.
Mm.
For somebody that isn't maybe also that way,
Yeah.
it's they're like, whoa, okay, that's amazing. But
Right.
I feel squished,
Right.
maybe even.
Right. And then what happens? I mean, it's just so interesting. Like, even if, say, like your kind of backlash isn't comments or whatever, but like for your life's work to constantly be deleted left and right, like
Yeah. Oh,
you probably
and
have
it
like
like,
how many thousands of followers, like, that you've built up on each of those accounts. And
mm,
and for a smothering of your voice, basically, like time and time again.
yes. Well, I feel like for me, yeah, for me that is done by Instagram and by the shitty regulations that they have. So I feel like for
Right.
me that also has affected me because of what has happened is that, yeah, like I feel like I have been silenced in a way because I share all this work and I'm so passionate about it, and then I get deleted, and it's like I lose that whole audience, and
Right.
it's like, yeah, like there's been times where my accounts have been deleted where I feel like my fire to share my art has been put out because I just
Yeah.
feel like, nature of my photos, it is nude photography. So it's
Right.
the wild woman. Like the wild woman is not dressed in stuff.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, this is so juicy because it's kind of a like a weird mirror of the witch wound, or like a putting out of that
Yeah.
energy. And I'm curious, in those times that it's happened to you, like what has been the process? Even when you're like in distress or like despair, like, and then like how does that like alchemize in you? Like how has that changed you?
Mm. So for that, I think I've there's been parts of me that have become quite numb to it.
Mm.
And I feel like when my World Within Her account got deleted, which has been with me since, first started my blogging and everything, I was like,
Uh,
okay, well, that's just like part of the maybe the shedding or the letting go. And like, it has affected my business a lot in
yeah,
terms of, before, if I have an account and if I put my Wild Women Circles out there or anything like that, they just get booked out straight away.
yeah,
I didn't have a mailing list or anything like that. And even with my own one-on-one shoots, like, so it does affect me. And I think that really feels sucky for me because Instagram is my main platform to promote my work and to do what I do. So
right.
when that gets to be shut down, it's like I feel like I have to work twice and triple as hard to really like, you know, yeah, do what I do.
Right.
So I feel like, I have absolutely sat with the just feeling, even like I worked through like the victimhood of this like
Mm,
feeling like why me, and like this work is, and my photos and everything is such an activation and is so inspiring, but just like really sitting with all that's coming up for me. So all
yeah,
of the like the victimhood, and then like the rage and like the fuck you Instagram, I'm gonna move over to Sunroom where I am
right,
celebrated, where I'm basically even paid for it.
right.
And I guess like new opportunities do arrive from these things. So I have actually learned to I'm very good at taking the punches, and
Mm,
my mental health and my center has become so important that
yeah,
it's like I feel it and I see it and I accept it for what it is, and then I just like, okay, so how can I move forward?
right,
And it has been times where I haven't wanted to share anything on my socials, and I'm still
right.
in that phase where I'm just like, I have so much to share and I have so much to put out there, but I'm on this like strike because it's
Yeah.
like feels like I've actually journeyed with this really interesting wound that, like I say, when it comes to the witch wound, and this is like the modern day witch hunt for me, I actually see that me sharing my work and me sharing like what I do is actually is it's like a death threat, because if I do, I'm gonna get deleted. Therefore,
Mm,
it's like a death of me, you know?
wow.
And
Yeah.
it was so deep. Like I could really see how much I'm scared in a
Mhm.
way these days, or
Right,
initially when these things were happening, to
right,
actually keep putting myself out there and keep sharing my work, and like I say, like building the momentum again, which I now have because I obviously worked through that. But I could
right.
really see the thread of me seeing that this is a day modern day witch hunt, and I
Yeah,
am the witch that they didn't fucking burn.
right,
And but yet they keep deleting me, yet I keep resurrecting myself and like, no, like this work
right,
needs to be out there. There's so many women that needs to see this and receive these transmissions. And but yeah, there is still parts of me that like I definitely don't share or post or as active on socials and on my Instagram as I used to be. And now I'm
right,
just more active on my sunroom, which, like I say, I can share my uncensored photos on there and be celebrated and be paid
right,
for it, like,
right,
and I'm just like, I would rather invest my life force energy into something where I'm celebrated, where other than where I'm dimmed, where I'm like suppressed, where I'm
right,
deleted, where I'm silenced. I'm like,
right.
fuck you. Yeah, simple
Yeah.
as.
Thank you for sharing. And I feel like it's really important to highlight the parts where you're like, it's okay, like that I'm in it, like, I guess like so much of this work is about accepting the parts where you're in victimhood and sometimes where we do feel defeated and we're like, actually protection for me feels not like posting right now, like actually I'm taking two
Yeah.
or 3 weeks to fucking grieve on my own. Like I don't know anybody, anything.
Yeah, grieving
And
is such a process. It's a whole thing in itself.
but it's almost like if you skip over that, like we don't get to it's like we might drive ourselves into a hole if we go like the old route where we're like, something bad happened to me, let me just be in survival and then just jump to the next thing before skip
Mm.
over the rage, grief, and
All those feelings, whatever it's bringing up in you, absolutely. Yeah, I think
yeah.
it's, and actually lately I've been really feeling a strong call to actually even host something that's a bit of a like a grieving retreat.
Yeah, I
Just
would
like a
I want to
place
go. Yes.
for place for people to come and really work through their grief and their sorrow in this most nourishing, safe, gooey
Yeah,
place
I
where they
love
actually
that.
get to feel the depths of their grief,
Yeah, that's
ancient grief.
totally. That's what I was thinking too of having starting to have just like things online. Like there's just, we used to have grief ceremonies and rituals, and
Yes.
it's so
And there's
healing.
just
It's
nowhere to really go. And like sometimes at work, like, when you're at home and there's just so much to do that you just find things to, take yourself away from it or something,
right,
there's so many ways that you can not go deep into it. But when you
right.
really deeply, and I know you're so amazing at that, like, you're such an inspiration for so many to just like, yeah, like really go there with grief.
Yeah,
And I know that you journey with grief so deeply and so intimately, and it's so
yeah.
beautiful.
Thank you.
So yeah, like, oh God, it's big, and
Right. It's
yeah.
it's like almost as I don't know, it's so funny because it feels like there's only room for us to show our like fiery, powerful woman parts, but I feel like they're born from the other half, which is the grief and the rage.
Mm.
It's like without that other half, this part doesn't happen.
No, and it's not whole. It's not, I feel like it's, yeah, not fully integrated if it's just like one and not the other. I really
Right.
do believe that grief is just another coin side to love. and the more
Yeah.
the deeper you
Yes.
can feel your grief, the more love you can actually feel.
Totally. It's like when we're in those places of like our heart being broken open is like when we're
Mm,
actually in the place to receive love.
yes.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I love grief. I love tenderness. I love, just the softness of, yeah, like just the rawness and the tenderness of emotion, and when people can actually allow themselves to meet their own edges. And that's what I
Right.
encourage my to do. It's like, don't just go all out. Like, I don't, it's just like, I just want you to lean in and meet your own little edge. Like, what
Yeah.
could be,
Right.
it's like, still stay within your own, because everybody's at different levels,
Yeah. Different capacities.
different capacities. And like I say, so I am aware of, yeah, just like the whole, I wouldn't say I'm trauma informed as such. Like, I've not had any like formal trainings, but I'm so intuitive, and I can, I've never had any like hectic episodes happening in my circles, and I've been doing them for so long, and I
Yeah.
literally ran so many circles around the whole of Australia by now, and there's never been like really in like hectic like trauma response kind of
Right.
things with my
Right.
circle.
Wow.
Yeah. I
Well,
feel
I'm
like because of the how I do them, and the deeply safe, sacred space that I hold, and all the stuff, and even like I say,
right.
like yeah, even when women do go into really deep ancient rage and
Right.
like all that, it's like then they go into grief. They
Mm,
start to
mhm.
cry usually, because underneath
Yes,
rage is usually grief.
definitely. Yeah.
And then they get to be really held in
Mhm.
that. Yeah, and
Wow.
even to be held by another sister, it's so, like I say, there's so many layers that get to be felt and healed in these spaces.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, and to nerd out, that's like I talk about state dependent memory when we can go back and bring up some of those like states where we needed to be held, but we were left
Yeah.
alone. And so that's essentially what you're doing. It's like bringing it up and then we're inserting like a new resource and then it settles back down as a new
Yes.
story. And the new story is no longer I'm completely alone or, like I have to do everything by myself. I have to
Mm,
put on this
mhm.
like brave front. Yeah, I love that. And also you brought up like not only your intuition, but I'm curious like how you feel like this kind of work draws women and even yourself in this process back to your instincts or your intuition.
Yeah. So, yeah, like I lead a very, like I really follow my instinct and intuition. And like I say, it's a process as well, because obviously I used to be in London and used to be very much like a city girl in some ways. I
Mhm.
always, like, I've had a beautiful upbringing. I had my minark, and I had a full ceremony when I first bled. And I'm one of the lucky
Wow.
ones, being
Oh,
my age, that I
so
had that
cool.
ceremony and I was
Yeah,
honored and lucky to
because
have a very
you come from like a family that just maybe to give a little background about your upbringing or your family.
upbringing. Yeah, so I was born, like say I'm Siberian, born in Lithuania. And in Lithuania, it's very like I grew up very much around around the elements, eating really
Mm,
beautiful organic food that we grew. And my mom has always been very spiritual, and she's pretty much been like
mm,
every like religion, and she's very curious. She's tried it all, I feel
yeah,
like very vivacious, like larger than life kind of
yeah,
woman. I am my
and
mother's daughter.
right, and you said that your grandmother was not that way.
Well, my great grandmother, who's one of my spirit guides, she
Yeah,
was actually very witchy. She was a witch,
right,
and I work with her a lot, and I really truly believe. And I had the download that it was my great grandmother,
mhm,
Maria, who is also my mom. Actually called me after her,
yeah,
so she's actually the one that has, really brought me to do what I'm doing today. So it
mm,
was just this, it is a lineage thing. I work so much with ancestors and the lineage and the maternal line. And like I say, just this whole, like, not only do we, yeah, there is obviously a big conversation around like generational trauma, but there's also generational gifts and there's generational
Yeah,
ancestral like magic that we get to tap into.
totally.
And, it's just all part of us anyway. So,
Yeah.
anyway, so yeah, my great grandmother was very witchy. She was very much. I really feel like I'm also maybe I'm in some way in a reincarnation of her, and
Mm,
so it's this, yeah, like interesting thing of, yeah, like I'm being guided by something, but then again, I feel so connected to all these things. And
right.
so, yeah, I was born in Lithuania and I was there and I had a very wholesome, beautiful, connected upbringing. And then I moved to London and I was in London for a bit. And yeah, me and my mum have an incredible relationship. It was enmeshed, very much so. And when I
Yeah.
moved away from London and into Australia by myself, that's when the kind of like it's like the enmeshment needed to get undone.
The individuation process.
Yeah, the individual
Yeah.
process. I really needed to, yeah, come back to very like, who am I? Just this, young 20 something year old woman on the other side of the world by myself, not knowing anyone, not having any family here. And that's when the deep process started. I feel like, I knew that I wanted to be more living with nature and with the elements and with the earth. I wanted to be a lot more like wholesome in a way. Like I really loved all the women and all the families in Byron, and I was so inspired by that. And
Yeah.
yeah, like this, I am very bougie as well, so I feel like I do have that in me. Like I love the luxuries of life, and
Yes.
like I am a very ambitious, successful
Yes.
woman. However, yeah, like I really love, yeah, the life that I've created for myself here in Australia.
Yeah. I mean, and I love that you bring up luxury too, because that's so much part of, like I'm an artist, a designer, like I love
Mm,
beauty and I find beauty to be the gift of nature, of like the goddess, the divine mother, as one of the best regulators. And
mm,
it's like everything you're speaking to as part of this archetype is something that like we're reclaiming, that like society has deemed not okay to be as a woman, like bougie, sexual, sensual, full of rage. Like everything we're talking about is like has been weirdly rejected, including like pure, like when
periods. Yeah,
periods
bleeds.
and having been indoctrinated by certain religions and like also needing to come back to our own spirituality, even having, say, for some people been forced into religions that don't serve them, who have like taught them shame culture, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
do believe that, what you speak to this beauty, like for me, I work so much with like Venus and then also
Yeah.
Inanna and, Venus and Inanna and even just all those like rose priestesses and the whole
Yeah.
rose. It's all about beauty. And I'm very
Yes.
Venusian. Like for me, I'm
Yes. Me
all about
too.
like beauty and comforts and
Right.
just all those Venusian themes. And
Right.
I absolutely, yeah, like own that about myself. Like that
Yeah.
I create beauty in the world. And that's one of my like deepest values, I believe, is
Yes.
actually one of my authentic codes is
Right.
beauty. Because like
Totally.
I'm here to birth beauty into the world. I'm here to beautify people. I used to be a personal shopper when I was in London. So I used to be like a stylist, and
Yeah.
like
Oh my gosh, I
I
love that.
love to better people and beautify
Right.
people in a way that is authentic to them, like
Right.
clients would used to come and they were, yeah, like I would find their own little flavor with what I see in them. And again,
Right.
just like relying on that intuition and just like feeling into it. And even with the photos where I create, it's like I really allow their true essence to come through. So that way I can really
Right.
just capture their maybe their shyness or their softness or like
Yes.
their like beautiful yummy like sensual self or whatever that
Right.
may be. It's like I just allow for people to unfurl and allow for people to undo and just like
Right.
come into this like beautiful blossom,
Yes.
and so beautiful to witness, whether like I say if me doing a personal styling session on someone, or whether that's guiding people through my ceremonial photo shoots, where it's like they just get to be like come out of their like titles of the mother or the wife or this or businesswoman and stuff, and they just
Right.
get to be like, but who are you, like, without
Right.
all of the things, like, show me
Exactly.
you know.
Yes. Yeah, and I love that so much because like I feel like most people are like, "Oh, I don't want to be vain," or "I don't want the camera on me. I don't want to be seen. Like I don't want people to think that I'm so into myself." But it's like this reframing of beauty, like tear away that like patriarchal definition of being greedy or whatever. It's not. It's the essence of who you are. It's like your
Mm,
authenticity is what you're describing. Um,
yeah,
and even
yeah,
like our
totally.
and like just as we're having this conversation, just empowering women like with their gifts, like their gifts and the beauty that they create in the world is like
Mm,
needed. Um,
yeah, they're authentic
yeah,
genius, I believe. Like, I really feel
yeah,
that, there's those of us who are in our genius, and stuff that comes out of us, our offerings and what we do is very much like, comes from this thing where we're just so connected to spirit that it's like, it
right,
just like we are a clear channel for like spirit just to work through us and to just like birth whatever needs to be birthed and to do that. But then there's also the imitators as well, where it's like so many people are inspired by my work, but you know, I feel like the resonance or the frequency of that is quite like, it's like imitation, and
yeah,
not it's not genius.
right.
And I'm not
Well,
saying that I'm not ever the first one to like, get naked women around the fire and like do photos, but it's like the frequency of my circles and what
right,
have they become, it just goes to show that it's like I didn't know anybody else
right,
anywhere else that was doing that, and
yeah,
I'm in that world. So,
right,
and now I just see these things like everywhere. And, there was really
hmm,
deep kind of sisterhood wounding that I needed to work through, and this like comparison and competition. And,
yeah,
like that's still like, yeah, that's also even like I guess, of a shadow that needed to be sort of really looked at. And there's still layers of that comes through,
of
even now and
course,
then.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like the whole, I
Yeah.
love
So,
that you. Sorry.
no, that was it.
Yeah, and I know that you
What
have to
time
hop
is it?
off. It's your time is 10 minutes till the hour.
Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah, we got 10 minutes. Okay, cool.
I love that you bring that part up because it's like showing up as the wild woman archetype, showing up as more in our authenticity and like more of ourselves also means that our shadows are going to come up in a bigger way. And it's
Yeah.
almost like this like as we grow more and more into our womanhood, we just have more capacity to actually be with our shadows when they look us in the
Mm,
face. And like, because I encountered this when I first got a following too, where I'm used to being invisible, like that's my story, you know? And then suddenly I started getting more and more followers and I had eyes on me. And then it's like the whole thing of like expectations put on me. And then I started being
mm.
a little bit of a charlatan because I'm like, well, now I have to be this expert. So let me start educating you in this way, right? In order to get more followers, in order to be liked more. And
Yeah.
that's its own shadow process to work through and even like bust out of
Mm,
that to come more into your wild womanness to like see your own shit, which is its own process of like seeing it, being with it, not shaming it, loving it,
mhm.
reintegrating that part and like continuing on.
Yes. Well, that's the work and that's the
Yeah,
beauty. Like, it's so delicious, when, like I
yeah,
said, you just have so much compassion for yourself and others, that we're just all guiding each other home. And
yeah,
like I said, like, the deeper capacity that you have, like the more stuff you're able to hold, the more stuff you're able to be with, the more able you to like come from this place of just like deep compassion and
right,
kindness. And
right.
to be like, "Wow, like, that bitch is still there. Okay,
And I
hello.
love her. I love her
I love
back.
her.
Like, oh, stop
Go
this
have a cup of
protecting me.
tea." Yes, and just like I say, even, there's so many amazing accounts like Madeline Moon and stuff,
I
like
love
she
her. She's
really, oh my
hilarious.
God. But like, it's,
Great.
it's about like making art with
Yes.
these fucked up parts of you. And like I
Right.
say, fucked up. I don't even feel like they are fucked up, but it's like I say,
Yeah.
it's like what society and what our culture, what our parents, everything seemed like unworthy and unlovable and all that stuff.
Right.
It's how can we just make art with it and allow
Right.
it to be integrated and know that we are like human beings, we're like the full spectrum, we all have these elements in us, whether
Right.
you know it or not, and whether you've integrated those elements or not, whether you've like experienced yourself, but the deeper you go into your own womb, into your own unraveling, into your own depths, you get to see
Yeah.
more and more of that, and you get to
Right.
just like, yeah, just be like, just have more love for it because it's just
Totally.
it's layered, it's multi-layered, you know?
Totally. I always say like you find gold in the mud. Like when I feel like my face is
Mm,
flat in the mud, that's where there's gold. And it's like this is basically the process of like transmuting our greatest pains or what society deems as our like problems or like, things that aren't accepted into our greatest gift. Like they become gold. And
yes,
that's
they
what
truly do.
and you give other women permission to do that same thing. So
Mm,
it's a magic where a process of magic actually, like the
it is.
caterpillar and the cocoon becomes the
Mm.
butterfly.
And
Um,
alchemy, it's really turning
yes,
lead into gold. It's those like, it
right.
is the negredo to albedo. It's the alchemy of turning lead into gold. And if you have no so-called lead that you think that you have to
Right.
work with, then there's not going to be no gold, and
Yes,
like
right.
welcome the lead because the
Yes,
more lead you
welcome the
have.
lead. Totally. Yes. Well, and we have a few minutes left, and I also want to talk about what's next for you because I know you mentioned just something on the horizon where you're in a huge alchemical process yourself of
Mm.
your work really changing and you really answering the call.
Yes. So what's next for me? I mean, the Wild Woman circles, because I was just reflecting on this the other day. They started during when shit hit the fan with the world in 2020, and I was already like embodying my wild woman. And that's
Hmm.
why, like, I had the capacity to like take women into it as well. But then I
Hmm.
think as the years went on, it's like I'm really not in that archetype anymore as such. Like, it's not my leading archetype, which it
Yeah.
used to be,
Yeah.
when it was time to be that, like, that fierce, like primordial mother, like, don't fuck with me.
Right.
And now I'm just kind of not really there anymore. So
Yeah.
my one woman circles are evolving to more, like I said, that queen, high priestess, like wearing royal codes, like still I do
Love.
love, and yeah, so they're evolving into the more like exalted divine feminine. I really now I'm doing these beautiful activations with like light language and like just allowing women to actually reconnect to their own divinity, like the
Oh,
god
yeah.
within and the goddess within them,
Yes.
and like anointing them and taking them to through these beautiful deep processes, but more initiate them into their most exalted, kind of integrated, whole, sovereign, beautiful woman that can just is both being like soft and powerful, and it's like you just get to be all of it, but like integrate this into one beautiful thing. And so I've
Yes.
got a shoot coming up with that, and it's going to be in the desert. It's going to be like
Oh,
full Egyptian vibes. It's going to
oh
be
my God.
beautiful in Perth. And that's going to be happening on the 16th of July. And then, yeah, I really feel called to actually go on my own pilgrimage. I'm really being called, like some of the sacred sites are really calling me. Like I say, I'm really stepping into this deeper, more higher level in my own consciousness and evolution and gifts. And then
Mm,
in order for me to receive those next activations, I really feel called to go to the sacred sites to receive the activations from those
right.
actual sacred sites.
Oh,
And
it's amazing.
there is a lot of medicine and there, and yeah, so I will be going back to the UK and doing that divine feminine and divine masculine ley lines and really journeying deeply with the Mary, not so much Mary Magdalene. She's not really so much in the UK, she's more in France, and but there is
Yeah.
still still like a lot of my own lineage, the Rose Priestess, the Rose lineage is still very much out there. So yeah, I feel cool to go back to the UK to go on a pilgrimage and do other sites like Delphi in Greece. And
Wow.
I'm really, it's like this
Yeah.
oracle in me is really coming online, and I need
Right.
to kind of leave Australia in order for me to get those other activations from those energies and those sacred sites and the things that are happening,
Yeah.
with like the potency of that. So
Wow.
yeah, and that will be probably with my shoots and everything else. I'm really stepping into, I mean, I do already one-on-one mentorings, and I act more as a guide.
Mhm.
So I really want to, yeah, just take on more clients like that and just basically
Right.
guide women like very intuitively, very much like based on whatever's going on with them and where they want to go. And the wealth of knowledge that I carry and all the wisdom
Right.
that I have, I just
Yeah.
act as this beautiful, like, big wise sister to really journey women into
Yeah.
their most authentic, deepest truths and
Right.
unfuckable power,
Yes.
just like, yeah, you get to claim
Yes.
yourself back.
Ugh, thank you so much. I mean, that's the whole arc of like going into the depths as the wild woman and emerging into your was it the high priestess or the
Yeah, like just the
queen?
queen, the high
Yeah.
priestess, the oracle. Yeah.
And also like, you know, the call of like sometimes going within and like not serving so that you can just be in a place of
Mm,
receiving directly with the divine before
yeah.
and just following your intuition and what's being asked of you. Well, I couldn't have
Mm,
asked for a
yeah.
better way to just encapsulate this work and this archetype. And I am so happy that the universe has brought us together. And
Me
I
too.
one day hope that I can be part of your shoots or that you can capture me or that we can have something together. That would
I would
be
love
a dream.
that.
That would be
Oh, it would be a
amazing.
dream. And I know that things are already conspiring in the near future with me coming to the US and really bringing my work to the US. And
Yeah.
yeah, that would be beautiful if that gets to align.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll just stay in
I would
touch
love to
and
meet you in person and spend
yes.
beautiful time with you. But thank you so much for having me. And like, really,
Yes.
just this conversation is so dynamic and so just, I love like the depth, like I say, the work that we both do and how absolutely crucial and important it is for, yeah, where we are at, and that we all have
Yeah.
these beautiful gifts where we could serve humanity and uplift humanity and just, like I say, just guide each other back home.
Right. And other
Yeah.
women. Literally just coming back home to ourselves is like giving other people permission. And
Yeah,
that's what we're
absolutely.
activating in women. So,
Yeah, and that's it. Permission
uh,
slip.
yes.
That's beautiful. So much
Thank you,
love to you.
Maria. You too. Thank you for hopping on today.
For having
And
me. I'm glad that it was able to make it happen.
so, I mean, you woke up like this. Literally.
Literally. Yup.
Yes. Oh my God.
Oh,
So much love. And
thank you, beautiful. So
mwah!
much love to you. So much respect and honor. And I'm just really holding you and giving you the biggest hug and all my warmth.
Thank